Welcome to another New Way Growth and ConeX LinkedIn Live, and we have Yinch with us here, and we are talking everything to do with AR and VR and the future of manufacturing and its place in that. So, yeah, Sam, I don't know whether you want to do any more of an intro into that, or whether you want to.
Not so much so today. We're going to jump pretty quickly into Yinch to get started, but ultimately these sessions are hosted for our members, by our members, to the wider LinkedIn community, to give a bit of an overview of what some of our guys are up to and some of the interesting technology and opportunities out there. So I think I'll very quickly start by handing over to Yinch to kind of introduce yourself, tell everyone who you are, what you do, what you've done in the past, and why you're here.
Thanks, Sam. Good morning, everybody. My name is Yinch, and my company is Playco, and we work a lot in 3D graphics and 3D software. I've been working in VR and AR for about 5 or 6 years, and I came in contact with the manufacturing sector through the ConeX network, which is a superb arena for collaboration. I have previously used VR for fitness, VR for simulator training. I've done VR in education. I've done some AR projects with Oxford University and some VR projects at Oxford University. And I just believe that these immersive technologies of VR and AR are able to help us achieve things more easily, things that we want to do, and also to help us to do new things. So I'm here today to let people know that this technology isn't something remote and far away, but something that can be useful to them and something that they can access with technology that is which is readily available, both in terms of software and hardware, and also you can start using this technology without buying any new hardware. So I'm here to demystify the immersive technologies.
I think what you touched on there is kind of how easy it is actually to access. You talk to a lot of people around VR, AR, and they're like, "Oh, this is this magical thing that's far, far away and way too expensive, and no one can get into it, and it just doesn't really exist in the real world." But that is far, far from the truth. I think when we first met, I didn't know too much about the kind of concept and the ideas. It took me all but a week to buy a headset, I think, after we probably first spoke. And yeah, ever since I've been using it and trying out various tools, trying to kind of, I would say, help that mindset move it away from it's just a gaming tool, because the traditional thing, VR, it's just for gaming, isn't it? Whereas there are so many other opportunities and ideas out there which are slowly coming to the forefront, which are always quite interesting. So I've tried some kind of design tools in there, some creative tools, which are always quite fun and interesting, and seeing your actual designs that you've designed on a, say, CAD system in the real world, to then actually put them in a VR headset and actually hold things that you've designed without actually having to print or make anything is very, very interesting. Adam, what's your kind of experience on using VR?
Well, there's been a number actually, and I'd probably never really sunk in until I'd met Yinch via yourself. I can remember probably the earliest side for me was, I think it must have been about 2013, where we were at Cranfield University. And they showed us if I remember right, they've got the room set up with the cameras. And they you put the headset on, and it was a car. I can't remember what car it was. It was a TVR. I think it was a TVR or something like that. And you pulled the car in front of you, and then you could explode the car out into its finite elements. So you could actually go in and let's say take the door skin and explode it out right down to the screws. And what they were looking at then was around the integration of having that for field service engineers. So if they were going to a machine, they could actually put the headset on and visualize what the machine was like, particularly if it had been bespoke. And they could dismantle it with instructions back at the head office, and there was an integration that way. So that was the first sort of really hadn't really sunk in then. That was the first sort of experience that we'd had with it, and then obviously with what we with Yinch and what he showed us from then on. And since then, it's always been a fascination, as Yinch knows.
Yeah, exactly that. So we've got three very quick questions for Yinch. If anyone listening along, I know there have been a few comments, which is great. If anyone's got any questions while we go, please drop them into the comments, and we'll keep an eye on those and make sure that we do ask them as well. So very quickly, first question. So going back to kind of simple terms, key difference between VR and AR, because I know we just throw the words around here and there, and what's the main difference, and how might that be relevant to kind of manufacturing?
This is a starting point. It's worth distinguishing between virtual objects and virtual spaces versus physical objects and physical spaces. What these immersive technologies do is to join virtual and real objects together. In the case of VR, you are put into a virtual space, and in the case of AR, virtual things are put into your space. That's like this. That is the short definition of it. Uses of those two are that when you need to visualize a space that is hard to access or doesn't yet exist, then it lets you see things in true scale. And for AR, you can use it when you need to contextualize an object which doesn't yet exist, so you can bring it into your physical space, and that lets you think about it and see it in context rather than just seeing it separately on a screen somewhere. So VR and AR, the difference is with VR, you're in the virtual space, and in AR, the virtual things are in the space with you.
Very good answer. So that's a different. I've never heard of it described as that way before, which makes complete sense. So you're kind of expert. Do you work in both fields? Or are you primarily in the VR side?
I work in both fields. Again, just to restate, I know that there is a tendency to think of a lot of these digital technologies from software vendors like myself as a solution in search of a problem. And I like to say that the reason why I work in VR and AR is because they do solve problems. Although I like AR and VR as a technologist, the things that attract me most to AR and VR is how it helps solve real world problems, absolutely. And therefore, I use VR where VR solves the problem of immersion, and I use AR in the places where people need to contextualize the virtual object in space. So I work in both. I've done both what are called native apps, which you install onto your devices, and I work a lot using a technology called WebXR that lets you access these technologies just by using a web browser. So either a web browser on your phone or a web browser in your headset. Either of those can be used to use AR and VR.
And that's what we used quite a lot of the kind of web-based stuff during COVID and during lockdowns, didn't we, for various meetings and sessions that we trialed out as a bit of a group, which was always quite interesting. I think we did a full-sized trade show during lockdown in one of those systems, which was great because some of us had headsets on and we were in the actual virtual environment walking around with headsets on, and then others could just log in online and just join via a web browser, which I really like, that kind of overlap in working between the both. So that was really good. Adam, do you still use that room that you created out of interest?
Yeah. I've got three of them. The thing that I always remember was being in the room and somebody having a VR headset and somebody not. And what freaked me out was the point of fact that the person with the VR headset, when you didn't have the VR headset, your avatar, when you turned, the whole body moved. But when you had the headset on, it was just the head that moved. So you went, and when I saw that for the first time, because I shouted somebody and the head turned, it was like, oh wow, that's a bit freaky because you could see the head
and
hands
moving,
hands and everything. But it was just the way it looked. It turned and looked. I thought it was brilliant. But it's advanced on no end from what I see. I mean, I can remember talking about the AR VR. We were in conversations, weren't we? We had a business that was looking at this staircase. They built staircases, and they had a showroom, and they wanted to close the showroom down because it was not located in an ideal place, and create a space where they could drop the drawings in the space so the customers could actually come in and look at it, things like that. So it is advancing on at a rate of knots. And I can remember, I think you showed us that one where with alloy wheels on your phone, I think it was, for your car, and you could walk out and stand by your car and take the alloy wheel off of the wherever it was, the website you were looking at, and actually put it onto your car to see what it would actually look like. So that, again, that mix around it is fascinating. So yeah. But yes, we still use it. Still mess about. And in actual fact, it's a spot me thinking, actually, I really do need to promote that a little bit more. Something like that.
So from your perspective, Yinch, what are some of the most kind of exciting potential kind of future applications that could transform this kind of manufacturing space in terms of the work that you're doing? So where do you see things going? Where do you see it becoming a little bit more mainstream and more common in a day-to-day kind of manufacturing environment?
There's a kind of there's two fronts which I think immersive technologies are advancing along. I think one piece which was more relevant before was just the capability of the technology, and I think that has advanced a lot in the last few years. And I think that the big change that can happen in the manufacturing in terms of increasing productivity comes in awareness of the technologies that we have today, and that's partly why we have this talk. So I think that, for instance, with things like a Quest headset, which is a buy from Amazon, or even just your phone, wherever I put my phone, these are devices that let you bridge into technology. So I think that people knowing that you can use these technologies with like consumer type devices, you don't need like a big room or a big computer or anything to make it work. It's like a big first hurdle, and so I would say that what VR and AR can bring to manufacturing is the ability to see things in true scale, right? So you see things as they are, and to break away from the idea of things appearing on a tiny phone screen or tiny laptop screen. What VR lets you do is to see things as they are. And this has lots of implications for ergonomic design, space design, product design. And so I think that the use of true scale representation using immersive technologies, either on the phone or in the headset more, will let you know things before you commit to a physical process. And the reason I mentioned that particular step is that the idea of visualizing something before you actually build it is something that mock-ups have done all the time. We do 3D print, and people love 3D printing. They say, oh, I can 3D print it, I can see how big it is and stuff, before I actually build a thing. And that's obviously we want to know as soon as possible if there's a problem. And I think what VR and AR does is it lets you do that kind of real-world, contextualized, true-scale visualization as fast as you can export the software, as opposed to as fast as you can 3D print. I mean, 3D printing is fast, don't get me wrong. And there's certain things that VR and AR can't do, like maybe like textures and stuff. It's not all the way there yet. But in terms of getting a sense of whether is this cabinet too high? Is this box too big? Can I see under this? These are all things that are hard to tell on a screen, but you can tell instantly in a virtual space. And so I think it will let designers and manufacturers visualize early and discover design problems early and iterate early. And so I think the revolution comes from shortening the central creative process by giving them ways of iterating fast and therefore do more iterations. So by the time we come to actually manufacture it, instead of having had like 4 3D printed iterations, you could have had 40 like VR iterations, and that will help refine the product. So I think you just end up with more of what you're more likely to end up with what you want, and more quickly. And so all these are benefits which I think will help the manufacturing process.
Yeah, it's just breaking that process down, isn't it? It's that initially would have taken this long to design a part, 3D print it, hold it in your hand, think, oh, that's something needs to change, something's not quite right. Let's go all the way back to the very start and go through that process again. Whereas this is now a design within seconds. You can actually be holding it, in a virtual environment, quick tweak, moving on very, very quickly, going through those processes really quickly to then get to the next stage of production. But knowing you're pretty much 99% of the way there, because you've gone through this iterative process before you've actually started prototyping.
Yes,
which
as a
I think
specific,
could.
yeah, as a specific example, during COVID, I helped 3D print a mask for N95 filters, and I visualized the positioning of the mask in VR before I printed it. I still printed it, but because once you screw the big disc on, you want to see whether you can still, because I was printing it for a dentist in Malta, so it was an example of pre-visualizing, and I altered the design of the mount based on what I discovered, because you can't see past your nose, and so it's an example of discovering design changes you need to make, like in a space before you actually come to commit to a physical thing.
There's another cracking example of this, which I think I sent both you two, which is Guy Martin and his speed with record with the JCB, and they were thousands of miles apart, and they came into the design sort of like center virtual reality with a full size JCB and looked at the aero side of all the design. So all the designers came in and locked into VR, and they were chatting and walking around the JCB, it was just phenomenal.
I think that's quite common now in some of these larger organizations. They all have their own little VR spaces now set up, because they're looking at this productivity, they're looking at automation, they're looking at some of these challenges that are out there, because ultimately they have the time and resource to actually go through some of these processes and set aside teams to work through some of this. And it's there, it's readily available in industry, it's used. It's just where can it filter down further down the supply chain? Where can some of these SMEs kind of make quick wins? Where can they get hold of these kind of headsets? Where can they start to bring this into their day-to-day, rather than just thinking it's another toy to play with, another bit of technology to play with? It's readily used in big industry. Is it now is it just a time thing that's slowly going to filter down into the SMEs? Is it someone needs to be kind of driving this forward? What's your opinion on that, Inch?
I think that the barriers are like twofold. There's sort of supply side and demand side and awareness. Well, that's threefold, I guess, technically. I think that it has to be recognized that there is some misunderstanding about what AR and VR was, because I think VR peaked early, and lots of people think, oh, to use VR, I have to have a PC and I need a laptop, and you know, and so you'll say, I'm not going to do that, right? You know, I've already spent this much on petrol and hotels and stuff, and so I think one of like the big barriers with this technology, which I think is a very important piece for any technology going mainstream, is to acknowledge that the mainstream market and users do not have what I call a separate innovation budget. So when you say to them, please use this technology, and they'll say like, that's fine, they're going to take me time and money, where is this going to come from, right? And you literally have to say to them, if you do it like this, you'll save £2,000 on hotels, air travel, and manufacturing materials. And they say, oh, then how much will it cost me? You say, oh, it'll cost you like £300 to do it. And so I think one of the things is to let people know that this technology isn't a thing that you add on to your cost. It's the thing that when you use it, it actually reduces your cost. Because I think in the mainstream, I mean, early adopters like myself, we're always happy to like make a bet on spending money on a thing. But as you try to approach people who have, you know, like who are not innovators and early adopters, then I think we have to make the case that using technology has benefits to them. Not just like, because lots of vendors come to them and says, oh yes, if you spend this extra money, you get this extra capability, and then now although you spent more money, now you can do more things. I would say that one of the like convincing cases for me for AR and VR is that if you use the technology, you're able to do more things, and it'll cost you less money to do it, and save you time. And so I think we have to make the case that these technologies help reduce your resource commitments to doing things and save you time. So I think that's like a big piece we have to push through.
I think that links in with what Lydia's question was asking around how will faster iterations accelerate the innovation and design process. Well, that's the other cost reduction that you'll get within this process is you will innovate quicker, and the design process will be quicker. So therefore, you're reducing costs again around that.
And you know, where we used it as a trade show, I think, Adam, we did some calculations, didn't we? During, I know we're all in lockdown, so we couldn't go to trade shows, but imagine a big show. I am going to plug Mac because I am going next week, but imagine a big show like Mac, if it was fully adopted and fully online and fully through this virtual environment. Imagine the amount of air miles saved. Imagine the fuel costs saved. Imagine the hotels saved. Imagine the venue space, all the materials that are used at these shows, all completely wiped out because you can do it in a, you know, this virtual environment. And I know there is value in meeting face to face and in person. I completely understand that may never change and may never, but it's those cost and sustainability implications that people can now start to consider and do that in a day-to-day meeting instead of driving from, I don't know, Bristol to Leeds for a meeting. Let's jump in a, you know, virtual environment, have exactly the same quality meeting, arguably better because we can actually hold or virtually hold the component that we're talking about designing rather than just looking at a laptop screen. Yes, you get a nice coffee and you're sat with someone, but if you're more productive and you can actually get better results out of doing it in a virtual environment, then why wouldn't you? I think is the question, really. Perfect. I was just going to say, as if anyone's got any more questions and comments, then please feel free to drop them in. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that, Yinch?
I just want to say that I think it's very good that both you and Adam highlighted the fact that the technology isn't just for looking at things, but also the idea of collaboration and being able to communicate in these shared spaces, being in a shared space without having to like physically travel is also powerful, you know. And so I mean, don't get me wrong, video is fine for these things, right? But you know, if I was to show you and says, look, I've made you this chair, right? I made you this chair, and I show it to you on the little screen here, and you go and this is like, is this right? You know, I'm making a custom chair, and if we were in VR, you could say, oh, it's a bit low or it's a little bit high. You would look at it, and so I think the ability to communicate ideas spatially is a thing that we actually can't do at the moment. We send floor plans, you send blueprints, you send videos of us standing next to the chair and stuff like that. And in the end, I mean, the thing to say is that the thing that I'm describing in terms of accurate communication, we achieve by physical visiting at the moment. If I was going to sell the chair to Adam and said, hey, Adam, I've made the chair for you. I'm going to drive over to you and I'm going to stand next to you and you tell me whether it's the right size. And you said, it's too high, right? And that whole process could be solved in minutes instead of hours or days making it and stuff. And so I think the ability to improve communication is like a critical piece that both of you mentioned, and the benefits of that. I mean, it literally pays for itself in one visit. I did a calculation once for a company that had a product design department, one in Banbury and one over in the Netherlands, and the trip of going for them to talk about product design was 150 kilograms of CO2 emitted if they did the trip, which involved driving to the airport, flying the plane, staying in a hotel, flying back and driving. It was 150 kilos of CO2, and a 2-hour VR meeting was 14 grams of CO2 emitted, which was the power consumption of the headset over two. So the carbon dioxide savings is like 4 orders of magnitude. And you know, I think as we talk about energy, that you know the benefits are come from many sides of it.
You know, just thinking about those, I was listening to Yinch there, and I was thinking back around a particular project I was dealing with a client, and we were revamping the manufacturing process. And normally you do that in a 2-dimensional thing, and you'd be throwing it about, and you know, bits of paper on a plan and stuff. And what we did was it's actually the photo of TCM UK Limited is we actually 3D printed the machines to scale, and then and this was to get sort of like to drive the buy-in within the team and help bring the team into getting involved. So it felt more immersive. Now then, if you take that to the next step, in actually the VR, and you're actually walking around, because it's relatively easy to do, walking around that cell with the life size scale machines. You can actually simulate the manufacturing process, and particularly if it's a manual process as well. Yeah, it's fantastic from a change management point of view as well, in bringing people on and showing and illustrating and the buy into the process. So there's a whole host of concepts with it.
And just to restate that, if one wants to try out immersive technologies, you can use the FrameVR. FrameVR.io is the website which Adam, I, and Sam all use for using immersive technology. You can use it on desktop and stuff, but you can also use it on the phone for VR. And it lets you, especially if you have a headset, and it works especially well if you have a headset, it lets you upload your model into a space and look at it one-to-one scale and meet somebody there. And just being able to see your things one-to-one scale, just so there's no software. Basically, say there's no software to buy. You need to get your model ready, prepared, export it from your CAD software. You upload it to this website, and then you go to your headset and you go to the URL and you're standing next to it. I mean, it's as fast as that. So I just want to say that the barriers are few. There's nothing that special about it. You have to have a headset that helps a little bit. And and there are also other pieces of software, not as easy as FrameVR, but still that will run on your phone, for instance, that lets you look at things in your space. My recent project with Oxford University, they wanted to see like a car and like a product in the space, and basically that was also just put on a website. And again, we mainly put it on the website, and people can visit it from their phone. So the access is very high. The barriers are very low.
I absolutely second what you just said, because based on what Yinta told me, that's exactly what I did with a client. Is actually did the model, dropped it in, and this is from a non sort of person that knows anything about it. Created the model, dropped it in, and we were able to walk around it and have a conversation. So
which answers Steve's question, which was the minimum kind of start point for SMEs. That it is literally knowing how to use the software rather than any real start, I would say. Obviously, yes, if you want to go into the VR environment and if you want to go into the headsets and those sorts of things, and yes, there's a cost involved to the headsets, but they're not a lot. Steve, for example, Steve, design engineer, has clients all over the country. If you were to drive and stay in a hotel from Cornwall, say, I don't know, up in Manchester or Birmingham, you're probably spending more than what you would do on a headset. Therefore, if you can convince your client to buy into that environment as well, you can very easily start to work together from down in Cornwall and work globally, ultimately, for a fraction of the cost.
And I have to say that when you do that, it is far more immersive and collaborative than actually if you were to come face to face without actually having a model of something in your hand. It's far more, opens up the conversations a whole lot more. So the value is massive on it if you can do it. Well, you can do it. It's not easy. It's not hard. It's easy. We've done it. That's my opinion, anyway.
No, completely agree. There's nothing, if we're in a creative industry, there's nothing like actually having something in your hand, even if it's a virtual something, but it's still, that's much more beneficial than having a 2D drawing or, something, that you've got to kind of then picture in a real space. You're actually getting it in a real space in your hands. And that's just, something that can't be beaten, in my opinion.
We actually visualized the extension on this house in the VR before we agreed to the builder's plan, because he came to us with a blueprint and says, "Oh, make it this big." And I said, "That's enormous." I said, "That's too. I mean, that can't be right. It looks huge, right?" But we put it in VR, and my wife and I, we went and we walked around and said, "Oh no, actually, this is okay. You'll fill it out. It's a kitchen as well." So it stops you making mistakes.
Yeah. Couple more questions. Let's see if I can do there we go. I think that's worked for you guys as well. So do you think some of these ideas around AR, VR are starting to drive the kind of network capabilities, and are they lagging behind what's needed to allow the capabilities of AR to be used in wider space? So is it what needs to come first ultimately, the change in technology or the change in the kind of network and the providers that are supplying the technology, I would say?
Modern broadband is absolutely capable of delivering collaborative experiences. We can do it now. We do it. I work with a US company. We are designing a whole digital world, and that I tested it over Starlink during the Easter break, because that's what was in the house. And you absolutely can have presence and conversations and download 3D models and experiences spaces together. There is some responsibility on the side of the content creators to make sure that they make 3D models which are not too big, just to simplify it. In the same way that when you're sending photos in email or you're putting a video on the website, you have to make sure that it's not a massive 8K 60 FPS file, right? And so in the same way, if you want to share 3D models in VR space, you just have to go through the extra step of making sure that it is conformant to the requirements of it. But it's extremely powerful. I mean, just the web-based technology on the mobile headset, like I've described, will draw 3.5 million triangles in a single frame at 60, 70 frames a second. So 3.5 million triangles is a lot. I'm just saying. So I don't think that the networks are too narrow for achieving what we want. There is some responsibility on the side of the 3D content creators, but it's all it's not the restrictions are not are not insurmountably tight. You just have to be aware when you do the design.
Perfect.
I was just thinking then, Sam. Actually, you know what we should have done is we should have done the mastermind in the VR on Friday.
We still could. There's still time.
Yeah,
there is going to be so that's kind of leading on to Bob's question, which will nicely bring this to an end. Obviously, Lydia's asked a question as well around of companies funding VR, and could they look at existing budgets like marketing and travel? And I don't see why not. If it's replacing travel, if it's being used for marketing experiences, and that's the kind of message that I say we've got to get across to these companies. If they're as Yinch said there, if they're questioning this as an additional cost, then it's actually replacing cost and lowering cost rather than the other way around. So it's just that messaging side of things, I would say. So we will bring this one to an end because we've gone over our half an hour. But obviously, thank you all for listening and joining and asking your questions. Please do feel free to connect with Yinch on LinkedIn. I'll ask him to put a couple of comments in the chat so you can connect with him directly. We have a ConeX members mastermind next Friday, so it's the 19th, so a week on Friday. And I believe we are going to go through a couple of demos. There's a couple of videos that we've kind of live recorded in the background that we're going to be playing, and maybe we do a quick frame demo where maybe a couple of us jump off of the Zoom call and jump into frame as a kind of demo of how these systems work, rather than doing the entire session in there. Potentially just as a quick sidebar for 5 minutes during that session is something that we could do. But yeah, there's plenty of opportunity, plenty of ideas, and if anyone wants to learn a little bit more around what we're doing at ConeX, then please connect with me and we can get you along to that more of a deep dive session next Friday. So that's the 19th, if I've got my date right, but I think I do. Perfect. Well, thank you all very much for joining, and we'll see some of you at MAC as well next week up in Birmingham.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Adam.
Cheers, Adam. Cheers, Yinch.